Cut out a few little festive stars, and then you have to stick them on to the top of the beef Wellington with another bit of egg wash, using it as glue again, and then I think that once that's done, we're ready to go in the oven, which is exciting. We can get on with the rest of the accompaniments. There we go, that'll probably do. Right. Now that's in the oven, it's time to get on with the accompaniments, which are going to be celeriac and swede mash with blue cheese and some honey roasted baby vegetables, which I think should go quite nicely. Right, now that I've had a bit of a tidy up in my area, which of course is always important whilst you're cooking, it's time to get on with the accompaniments. What I'm going to do first of all is boil the swede and celeriac, which I cut into chunks so that it'll cook a little bit faster in order for me to be able to mash it so it coincides time-wise with the beef Wellington. So I'll put these into the boiling water now. Being careful not to cover myself in water. There we go, some nice baby carrots there. And they'll go into the water as well, making sure that everything's covered, and I'll go and find a lid for them. Now, you may wonder why I've put the carrots in with the celeriac and the swede. I'm not going to be mashing them up. What I'm doing there is slightly parboiling them because they'll take a little bit longer to cook than everything else that's going into the roasted baby vegetables. So they probably need a little bit of boiling time first. What I'll do now though is get everything else ready whilst they're having a little boil. Okay, in here I've got some cut in half shallots, just quickly peeled. I've left a little bit of the stalk on there so that they don't fall apart when I cook them, because that sort of loses the texture of them. Next we'll put in the baby leeks. I like these because they're much sweeter than larger leeks, and also you get the full benefit of all the green leaves, which generally come off bigger leeks. Right, so we'll put those in there, bring this over here. What I want to do now is season that. So lots of lovely salt and pepper. There we go. And I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in, just to stop them sticking, but not to drown them and make them fatty. There we go. Next in goes a little bit of balsamic vinegar, which should add sort of a little acid touch to it, which I think would be rather nice. And finally, the honey. Now, ideally, I probably should have had honey in a squeezy pot, but this stuff's quite runny, so I can just drizzle it on anyway. I think quite a bit of that to make them nice and sticky when they come out of the oven. So what you need to do is give them a good old mix around so that everything's nice and coated, and it'll mean that it'll have some good flavours when it gets into the oven. What I'm also going to do is put a little bit more fresh thyme and some fresh parsley in with them, like I did with the mushrooms that went into the beef Wellington, just so they give them a really good flavour. There we go. That's nice, and they're ready now just to put the parboiled carrots on top, and then they can go into a good hot oven and cook for, I'd say, about 15 to 20 minutes, maybe a little less, but it depends on how long you've got your beef in for. Right, once your carrots have had, I don't know, 5 or 7 or so minutes parboiling in the celeriac and swedes water, you want to pull them out and put them in the baking tray with everything else. There we go. Maybe I'll push the carrots into the mix as well so that they get covered just like everything else in order to have a nice sticky glaze by the time they're cooked. There we go. Right, okay. Now I'm going to put these into a good hot oven. I would say probably about 180 to 200, not for very long, but they'll go in there and be ready for when the beef comes out. Right, well I've taken the celeriac and the swede off the hob and drained it in readiness to be pureed, but just before I do that, I'm going to put some of these nice tricolour cherry tomatoes in with the baby vegetable mix, just to add a little bit of colour to the seasonal vegetables, because they can otherwise be a little bit samey on the plate. So I'll go and put those in now. Put those in. And give them a little stir around so that they crisp up with everything else. And get covered in that nice balsamic glaze as well. Right, now those are back in the oven, we can get on with the puree. What I'm going to do is put a nice bit of butter in there with them. No holds barred on the calories, I'm afraid. And a little bit of creme fraiche as well. There we go, that'll just give it a nice creamy texture. A little bit of salt and pepper in there as well. And then forget to mashing. Not my favourite bit, but important. That's looking pretty good now, I'd say. You have to be strong-willed to mash something like that. I think it's now time to add the blue cheese. Now this is a nice Strathern blue British cheese rather than a French cheese, as I thought beef Wellington's quite a British dish, and so we should look for a nice good British blue cheese to go in there as well. Right, that's enough. That'll just add a nice sharp flavour, and hopefully the chunks won't melt by the time you've plated it, which will add nice texture to the puree as well. There we go, that's giving it an interesting colour too. I think that's probably about done. Now we're ready, I think, to start getting the beef Wellington out and possibly plating up. And now for the moment of truth. Oh, look at it. That's looking very good indeed. Oh, lovely and crisp and golden. It's probably time to have a look at the vegetables as well. And they too are looking rather good. Right, I think it's probably time to try and lift this beef out. It'll be easier said than done, of course. I see a few of the juices have escaped, so my seal can't have been quite as good as I hoped it was. There we go. There we are. Looks beautiful. There we go. They've been warming on the argo nicely. And I think probably a serrated knife would be best to cut this, so as you don't drag a smooth one through the pastry, because you want to keep that nice crust on top. So I'd better find one of those. Here we go, this should do the trick. And now, hopefully, we should find that inside we have a deliciously cut piece of beef. That's not it. He's a little bit further in. There we go. Oh, look at that. Still pink inside, but good and warm, so you know that it's good and cooked. Now we'd better lift the beef very carefully so as not to upset those layers onto the puree. There we go. Lay it gently across, just to get a little lift off the plate. And then if I get my tongs, I can select some of these delicious honey roasted baby vegetables. Just carefully place them around the plate. I think those tomatoes were a good addition. They've added some much needed colour to this dish. There we go. Ooh, a bit of an escapee there. We will have a couple of mushrooms. And a little leek at the front there. What I've got here is some horseradish cream. That's just a little bit of whipped cream, some creme fraiche, and some lovely hot horseradish that I've whipped up to make a little something, because there's no gravy. So if we just put a little spoonful of that on top, and hopefully it'll melt nicely down the beef. There we go. Worth it after all the hard work. I think I might tuck in now. Could go very well with my red wine, I hope. A bit of that horseradish cream. That beef is meltingly tender and very delicious, and I think, quite frankly, this is a bit of a winner winter dish.